Hello and welcome everybody to this slightly delayed episode of the Ask Abhijit show, episode 189. I hope you're all doing great. So let's see, as always, who all is there on the live stream with us before we get into anything. I can see Designer Life, Jayant, Geopolitical Dubey, Disha, Arush Sinha, Harshit Singh, Vishak, Tejo Meg, Tanmay Deshpande, Prajakta Joshi, Vineet, Yash Tiwari, Sujal, Bitupan Bora, Knowledge Seeker Varun Singh Malik, GK, Abhay, Abhijit Gupta Chanakya, Ombe Kerekar, hello, Prashant Kumar, Akhilesh, Samana Satish, Abhijit Ringe, Niharika again, Somyajit, Rakshasi, Raj, hey Aj, Kavyashri, Rala Avinash, Asminor, hello, Tejo Meg, Nitin Jain, Vishnu Mohanan, Threadripper, Red, Siddhartha, Abhay, Piyush Singla, Somyajit, Designer Life, Satvik, Nobody You Know, Tanmay Pandey, Mr. Carrot, Samriddhi, Gojo, Red, Prashant Kumar, Harsh Pratap Singh, Rakshit, The Pod Life, Akash Dhar, Anurag, Bhavishya Sharma, AC, Rishikesh Das Gupta, McLevin, Gupta's Educational Channel, Dheeraj, Suraj, Piyush, Vineet, Praful, Forum, Priyanka, Niharika, Akhilesh, Meghdeep, Tanya, Bai, Siddharth, Soham, Anmol, Raghuveer, Ujwal, Atmaj, Trupti Patil, hello, American Cheese, hello, and everybody else. Okay. So let's take a few more. Tommy Versetti, Jasneet Singh, Ram, Karma, Darshak, Aradhya, and Avyansh, Ishan, Mrinalini, Priyanka, Tanya, and everybody else. Okay. Let's stop greeting everyone at this point. So once again, thank you everybody for being on the live stream. Apologies for the slightly delayed live stream. I was in Delhi yesterday. I was at Rashtrapati Bhavan attending the swearing-in ceremony of Prime Minister Modi's third term and his cabinet. And it all is thanks to you, thanks to your viewership, thanks to the numbers that I have, all because of you. And I represented you over there. So gratitude and a tremendous amount of thanks to all of you for making this possible. All right. So once again, I'm going to take a bunch of questions from the comments. I'm going to answer 15, 20 of those, and then I will take questions from the live chat once those questions are exhausted. So it's going to be a hybrid session. Not all the questions are going to be from the comments. I'll take your live stream, live chat questions also at the end. I mean, in the second half of this episode. So let's see who all and also let me thank those of you who congratulated me for being invited to the swearing-in ceremony. I can't answer each of you individually, but thank you to each and every one of you. I really appreciate that. Okay, let us take questions. All right, let's take question one. Where is it? Okay, here it is. It is by Abhijit Banerjee. The question is, terrorist attack on Hindu pilgrims in Kashmir, 10 killed, 40 injured till now. Terrorism has had decreased by 95% under Modi 2.0, but right now at the beginning of Modi 3.0, we had such a big attack. Do you think that terrorism will peak again in Modi 3.0 as now Modi ji is a weak prime minister with less power? I don't think so. Look, it's true that it's no longer a BJP government. This is now an NDA government. The BJP, as of right now, doesn't have a full majority. They need the support, external support, or internal support of other NDA allies, which gives a lot of power in the hands of those parties. The Telugu Desam, the RJD, uh, I think it's RJD, Mr. Nitish Kumar's party, and so on. So even though these parties have a small number of seats, it gives them a tremendous amount of power. You could say disproportionate power. But you can see that yesterday the swearing-in ceremony happened, and you can see the people who were sworn in, the ministers and ministers of state, etc., who were sworn in. You will see that the majority of those are still BJP MPs, and all the major important portfolios will still be handled by the BJP. So it's not like because these external NDA allies have this leverage that they can get away with anything. And eventually, it is quite possible that the BJP may cross the 272, 273 mark by absorbing other independent candidates or candidates from MPs from other parties into the BJP. That may happen, and the BJP may by itself cross the 273 halfway mark in parliament. That may happen in the next few months. I mean, lots of speculation about that. It's entirely possible it may happen. And if that once that happens, if that happens, then the BJP is entirely strong enough on its own. So I don't think it's going to be a very weak BJP government. Mr. Modi right now is kind of weaker than what he was during the past two terms, slightly diminished power, but I don't think it's going to change much from the perspective of foreign policy, from the perspective of economic policy, from the perspective of anti-terrorism policy. So, what does this attack, this terrorist attack on Hindu pilgrims in Kashmir mean? It means that foreign powers, I mean, look, this terrorism in Kashmir is entirely a foreign creation. It's a phenomenon that has been funded and financed for decades by external powers. We think of it as a Pakistani creation. No, Pakistan is a proxy. It is the United States that funded and financed Pakistani terrorism in India for decades during the first Cold War in the 20th century. And today, well, Pakistan is still a vassal of the US and to some extent of China. I mean, they would like to counterbalance the US with China, but overall, it is still very much a vassal of the US. Okay? And so if something happens in India, Pakistani terrorism, we've got to understand that there are reasons behind that. And the West would like to see India cut down to size. India has been very assertive the past 10 years of Mr. Modi's government, and they would like to cut, cut that down to size. So one can see this, what happened in that context. It doesn't mean, see, look, you can't catch all the fish. There's always going to be some terrorists who get through and do things. So at the very start of Mr. Modi's third term, this is an attempt to put pressure on his government, to put pressure on him, to make him look weak, to make India look weak, and so on. But I don't think terrorism will make a comeback in Modi 3.0. I don't think so at all. And if the Pakistanis try any tricks, then I think we know what happens. One second. I think we have a problem with the sound. One second. Give me a second. Let me. Give me a second. Okay. So is the sound fine now? Is it fine now? The sound? I think there was some issue with the sound. Yes, I think it is clear. It is clear now. Okay, I think it was clear before also. So I'll just continue in the way I was going. Okay. So we have to understand the Pakistani terrorism in that context. If the Pakistanis try any real tricks, they're gonna see that India will respond very robustly, and maybe they will get a reaction that despite the Balakot and other things, they still may not expect. So I don't think the Pakistanis will try too much of this. So yeah, that's my opinion. That's the way I see it. I don't see Pakistani terrorism making any comeback in India. They will try something. They may try to push their luck here and there, but overall, it's not going to work for them. And if they cross a certain line, if they try too much, it's going to come to bite them in a way that they may not have expected. Okay, Pranay Paul says, Prime Minister Modi has said he's here for the next 10 years. Do you see any reason to be optimistic, or Yogi should be there in 2029 as per your post-election podcast statement? People definitely are delighted, but what's your deep-rooted opinion on this? If he wins the majority mandate again, then how do you see Yogi's future position from the context of serving Bharat? Okay, look, I am very clear, first of all. I wanted Mr. Modi to come back to power. I've been saying this for a very long time, and I'm very happy. I'm delighted, clearly. I mean, if you recall,
I had this podcast on. I had a podcast with Ranveer some time ago, about a month or so ago, and this is what I had said, and it was recorded before that. So it's very. I was very absolutely clear, crystal clear. I want to see Mr. Modi come back to power. You can call me whatever you want. It doesn't make any difference to me, and I have certainly got what I wanted. So very much. Mr. Modi comes back to power. That's what I wanted, and I have got what I wanted. Now, the question is, I'm not sure if Mr. Modi has said that he's going to be here for the next 10 years. I don't think if, I'm not sure, at least I personally don't recall hearing him say that he's going to be there for the next 10 years. I know that he had said uh, sometime last year that he will be the prime minister candidate for the third term, and he did that, and he has been re-elected. He is once again the prime minister of India, continuing the third term. I don't recall him making the statement that he wants to be there for the next 10 years. I think the way I see it, this probably is the final prime ministerial term for Mr. Modi. Obviously, at the end of the day, it's entirely his choice. And if the people still vote for him, they still repose their faith in him, then absolutely fine. But the way I see it, he is by the time this term ends, he's going to be in the mid or late 70s, and I think that's a reasonably good time for a leader to pass on the baton to the next generation of leadership. That's how I see it. Obviously, at the end of the day, it's entirely his choice. But I would like to see a leader like Mr. Yogi be the prime ministerial candidate in 2029. Uh, so that's how I see it. The deep rooted opinion on this is, I don't know. My opinion is that Mr. Modi, I would like to see him perform tremendously well during the next 5 years. And then I would like to see the next generation of leadership uh, coming to the fore. And as of today, I see Mr. Yogi Adityanath ji, as the right next leader from the BJP perspective. That's how I see it. Mr. Yogi obviously will have to perform. He'll have to do a tremendous job, continue to do a tremendous job in Uttar Pradesh. Elections will come up. He will have to win those. Then it will be a hat trick for him. So he was appointed chief minister sometime in 20, whatever, the second decade of the 21st century. Then he won an election, and or did he win the election? Okay, whatever happens, he has to win the next elections, and he has to continue to do a tremendous job in UP. And then he can, if he does that, then he has certainly proven his credentials as the leader of UP, the most populous state in India, and that would bolster his chances of becoming the next prime ministerial candidate. So that's how I see it. Next question. Okay, this is by Haley. Okay, the Lok Sabha election result is out. Last time you expressed disappointment to Mr. Modi for leaving out a lot of important tasks in his initiative. Look, he has done a tremendous job. I think Mr. Modi has been the best prime minister we've had in India since 1947. Okay, he has been the best prime minister we've had since 1947. And after he became the prime minister, we started hoping and we started really believing that India can be a great power in the century. People even believe that it's going to be a superpower. It's entirely because of Mr. Modi. When Mr. Manmohan Singh was there, nobody was talking about this. So Mr. Modi is the best prime minister we've had, and he's proven that in the past 10 years. Of course, I have been disappointed with the fact that the education system hasn't been reformed. Nothing has been done about culture and civilization. Nothing, not enough has been done from the cultural and civilizational perspective. The illegal infiltrators have not been thrown out, whether they are Rohingyas or Bangladeshis or whatever else, and so on. So, yes, no matter how well a prime minister performs, there's going to be there's going to be scope for improvement. So, yes, and I obviously have been disappointed with the fact that the education system and so on and so forth has not been, not much has been done. Education, nothing has been done, and so on. Now, the question is about Manipur, right? The BJP lost both seats to the Congress in my little state of Manipur too. Yes, the BJP lost both the seats in Manipur, Lok Sabha seats, to the Congress. Yes. As a Meitei, I'm extremely frustrated with Mr. Modi's inaction and non intervention to reduce the crisis, to resolve the crisis fast, like thousands, lakhs of other Meitei Manipuris who voted against him. So let me explain something before I take on the rest of the question. There's only one political party that is in a position to eventually resolve the Manipur problem, right? And in their wisdom, the Meiteis of Manipur have voted against that political party. And they have voted for the political party that has caused the problem. I would like to applaud the wisdom of the people of Manipur, of the Meiteis. You have voted for the political party that has created the crisis in the past 70 years, and before that also. And then you want the party against whom you voted to resolve your problems. What incredible wisdom, my friends. Now, I would like to ask you, do you want me to tell you things that you will like to hear, that you will enjoy hearing, or do you want me to tell you the truth? The truth is not always pleasant to hear, but I think you need to hear the truth. You're extremely frustrated with Mr. Modi's inaction, non-intervention to resolve the crisis fast. We put your faith in him by electing BJP, which still holds the state government, but are thoroughly disappointed with his unacknowledgement of the crisis and the deteriorating condition of the state. How do you think he will now act with regard to Manipur now that he has been re-elected under the NDA alliance? Do you see the NDA partners and the stronger opposition push him into action, or will he just sit on it all like the last time? Listen, if Mr. Modi had just been sitting, then do you think the Imphal Valley would be safe today? Huh? Do you know the numerical disparity between the Kuki population and the Meitei population? Do you think Imphal Valley would be safe if Mr. Modi had done nothing? Now, the question, you are right, Mr. Modi has not spoken about Manipur, right? He has not spoken about Manipur. Why is that? Let me explain why. First of all, let's understand what this problem is. And who is to blame for this problem? Is Mr. Modi to blame? Is the BJP to blame for this problem? This problem is that of industrial scale illegal immigration of foreigners into Manipur, into India, right? When did this begin, my friends? When did this begin? It began in the 19th century, after 1891, when Manipur lost its sovereignty to the British after the Anglo-Manipuri War. So Manipur loses its sovereignty, and then the British start, and even before that, the British had started bringing in outsiders into Manipur to punish, to create an artificial balance of power which never existed. So before the British came into the picture, after the great King Chingthang Khomba died, Rajarshi Bhagachandra, what a wonderful king he was. He did so much for culture. But he is the cause of the loss of sovereignty of Manipur. He did not take care of national security. He was busy doing culture, which is great. But he did not even ensure that the right succession happens. And then after he dies without a clear succession path, all his sons fight each other, and Manipur becomes weak, which is why the Burmese can invade. The Burmese invade Manipur, and then there is 7 years of devastation. And then in the early 19th century, the British get involved, and that's where the sovereignty problem begins in Manipur. So the root cause is your king Bhagachandra, by the way, who is revered as Rajarshi Bhagachandra, but he ruined your national security when Manipur was still a nation, a kingdom. So the British get involved, then they start bringing in foreigners, initially slowly. Then the Anglo-Manipur War happens, 1891, Manipur loses. Then the Meiteis are forcibly confined to the Imphal Valley, and large-scale Kuki influx starts. Even in 1901, the Kukis were less than 1% of the population, but then the British began industrial scale influx of Kukis into Manipur to punish the Meiteis. Now, after 1949, when Manipur becomes a part of India, did the Meitei people raise any voice against the Kuki infiltration? No, there was insurgency all across the far east of India, northeast. The Naga insurgency, the Mizo insurgency, the Bodo insurgency, the Manipur insurgency. Everybody was fighting these insurgencies because the far east of India was marginalized by the Congress party, by Mr. Nehru's government and successive governments. But the Meiteis never raised, they were not even aware of the fact that they have been marginalized so badly. and the Kukis have taken over the entire south of Manipur. The Nagas were aware, they fought the Kukis. Meitei is quiet. Until May last year, you people were not even raising your voice. You were living happily. Now May 3 or whatever it was, 2023 happens, and then you are raising this issue, which is a very legitimate problem. Obviously, you're facing a problem. But why were you not aware of this? That your land has been taken over, and you did not even just living blissfully and completely unaware, just living a happy life because you have your little part of Manipur into which you have been forcibly confined. Nobody was raising this issue of the illegal Kuki infiltration. Now you are blaming the BJP for it. Really, is the BJP to blame? Who ruined Manipur in the 20th century after 1949? You have voted for that political party. And, I have done many podcasts on my channel. There's only one or two that I regret. Okay. And the honorable MP that you have elected, that doing that podcast with him is something I regret. And let me make a prediction for you, my dear Meitei friends. The next 5 years, the honorable MP that you have elected is going to do nothing for Manipur. Okay? That's a prediction I'm making right now. Watch this video again in 5 years. I think you will only learn through pain. So that's what. Now, why has Mr. Modi been quiet? Is the question, right? This is a geopolitical issue. The British brought in cookies into Manipur before they came in. Before the British were involved, there were no cookies in Manipur. The British brought in cookies in Manipur after 1891, even more so. The the Nehruvian government and later 20th century governments of India also brought in more cookies. And you, Meiteis, were quiet. You did not raise a single. You did not raise the issue at all. Maybe you were not even aware of what's happening, right? And then in the 21st century, right now, there's a civil war situation in Burma. And this cookie influx that's happening now in the past few years, past decade or so, that is actually geopolitical issue to pile on more pressure and pain on India. And of course, the Meiteis, they are still the only large-scale surviving Hindu population, even though there are people among the Meiteis who claim not to be Hindu, and there are like 2-3 lakhs who have converted to Christianity. But still, the Meiteis are predominantly still Hindu or polytheistic. So that also is a problem, right? So Western powers want to destroy that. They want to convert the entire Far East of India into a Christian region, and then they can create more separatism, because once you convert to an Abrahamic religion, you develop extraterritorial, extra-national loyalties. That is something that there is a pattern you see throughout history in China and Japan, everywhere. So this is a geopolitical issue. And the root cause of the issue is the presence of lakhs of illegal foreigners who have infiltrated into India. Now, if Mr. Modi speaks about this, it gives an opportunity to the foreign powers to call him a fascist and take various actions against him. So you don't speak about it, but you take the actions. Now, there is no solution to the Manipur problem, which is going to happen in the next 6 weeks or 6 months or even 6 years. The problem has been created over a century, maybe more. So do you expect a solution in 3 weeks or 1 year? It's going to take minimum 20 years to solve the problem. And if the Meiteis had raised their voice 50 years ago, when the problem already existed, then maybe it would have been solved by now. And it's not the fault of the Meiteis. You people are very innocent people, not aware of what's happening in the world and not aware of how the world works. And the innocence is very clearly demonstrated by the person you have voted into power as an MP. So listen, there is a difference between words and actions. Mr. Modi, I know I'm sure it's very hurtful that Mr. Modi has not spoken about Manipur. There's a reason for it. At least he's taking some action that you may not even be aware of. I know there are problems. I know what the problems are. But it's going to take time to resolve the issue. There are these issues, these problems are legacy issues and legacy problems. Many things need to be done better, of course. It's going to take time. So right now, there's no short-term solution to this. Absolutely none. It's going to take a minimum of 20 years to solve the problem. If the Meiteis had raised their voice 50 years ago when the problem already existed, maybe it could have been solved by now. But No, didn't happen. So what can I say? Okay, McLevin says, why don't other nations respect India? Even small nations like the Maldives, Bhutan, and Nepal try to bully us. Sometimes I think Indians are too soft. Okay, let's talk about respect and let's talk about bullying. Do you know the meaning of bullying, sir? Bullying is when a cowardly, large, strong person picks on somebody who can't fight back. Okay, that's called bullying, which means that the person who is doing the bullying is larger than the victim, typically, generally, or stronger than the victim. And they know that this victim is somebody who can't fight back. Maybe this victim has no friends, is an unpopular kid, is a loner, and so on and so forth. So you pick on a weak person and you bully that person, and you bully that person. That's called bullying. You don't pick on somebody who's bigger and stronger than you. Bullies are cowards, even though they're strong. So so that is bullying. Okay. So when the Maldives does something against India, when Bhutan does something, Nepal does something, it's not bullying, by the way. It's not bullying at all. It's called opportunism. Now, now the main question is about respect. Now, so let me ask you a question. Here, you see a cat, a kitty cat. Here, you see a tiger. Which one will you respect? You see the kitty cat, you'll say, oh, how cute, perhaps, if you like cats. You see the tiger, whether you like cats or not, you will say, oh, I'm going to stay as far away as possible. Okay? So, you see a little puppy dog. You say, how cute. Here's a puppy dog here in this hand. Here I show you a bear, a Himalayan brown bear. You see the puppy dog, you'll say, oh, how cute. You see the Himalayan brown bear, you'll say, I'll go to the next state. I'll not go in Jammu and Kashmir or Ladakh. I'll go to Punjab or I'll go to Delhi. I won't be there. So you don't respect a puppy. You don't respect a cat or a kitten. You respect the tiger. You respect the bear. You respect the elephant. You respect the crocodile. You respect the python, the anaconda. You don't respect a goldfish. You respect a shark. Where does respect come from, my dear friends? Respect comes from fear, mostly, at least in the world of geopolitics. Respect comes from fear. In the world of civilized societies, you respect people. Of course, we in India have a whole ancient culture. We respect those who are learned, we respect those who are cultured, and so on. But in the world of geopolitics, which is not Indian culture, it is a global culture, respect comes from brute force, from brute strength. It comes from fear. In geopolitics, the rule of the jungle applies. Okay? Now, I haven't cracked open the map today, have I? So let's crack open the map. And let's look at respect from a map perspective. Now, here's the map. Here's the map. So this is the Indian subcontinent and the surrounding regions, right? So apart from China, the largest country in the region is obviously Bharat. It is India. Maldives is not even visible. Nepal, obviously, we know where Nepal is. Bhutan is this smaller nation here, and so on. Now, just from the perspective of size, do you think these little nations can bully India? No, right? And India in the past 10 years has become such a large economy, the fastest growing economy, and a much stronger nation. But there's no question of these nations bullying India. Then the question is, so in Asia, there's only two nations that are really, from the perspective of other nations, worthy of respect. And of course, you need to have the willingness to use the power that you have. So it's India and China, and to some extent Iran in Asia. That's the nations that would potentially scare other nations. Of course, India is not a hegemonic nation, so other nations aren't really scared of India. But the fact that India is so large, such a large economy, such a large population, a powerful military, and the nuclear weapons, that obviously brings a certain amount of respect automatically. So, let's talk about the Maldives as an example, and then Nepal also, right? The Maldives has been, they have this India out campaign. Hmm? and they asked India to take back whatever military personnel we had, 100 or so military personnel, and they're bringing in Chinese companies and asking Indian companies to leave for their infrastructure projects. Do you call this bullying? This is not bullying; it's opportunism. So they know that in the current geopolitical scenario, India is not going to turn up tomorrow morning with a bunch of naval ships, because there are other more powerful nations than India, like the US, which won't allow this to happen. Forget about China. The Americans won't allow India to arm twist the Maldives because the US wants to contain India. And of course, China is also a major power. So the Maldives can, if you understand the geopolitical scenario, the balance of power, and all that, then you can play one nation against another nation. And that's what the Maldives are doing. They are playing India against the US and China. That's what they're doing. Okay. And of course, there's a cultural thing, a religious thing. That's why they are antagonistic towards India. And then they use these things to offset India using the leverage from other nations. When it comes to Nepal, Nepal was never anti-India. It was one of the Indian governments, one of the Indian regimes in the 20th century that ended the Nepalese monarchy and actually supported the Maoists. And that's how the Maoists have become a major political force in Nepal, and the Maoists are pro-China. So that Indian government brought in a class of politicians in Nepal, and they brought them to power who are anti-Indian, pro-China. And imagine the stupidity, the abject idiocy of that. And why? Because Nepal was a Hindu nation. Nepal was a Hindu Rashtra. So to destroy Hinduism in Nepal, and now there's a big, large-scale Christian and other conversions happening in Nepal now, by the way. So to destroy Hinduism in Nepal and to destroy the Hindu monarchy and the Hindu Rashtra status of Nepal, they brought in anti-India and pro-China elements. That's the kind of governments we had in India. Okay. So now today in Nepal, if you all these parties are, I mean, all these Maoist and leftist, communist, etc. parties are anti-India. And today the Nepalese mindset, I believe, many of the Nepalis, especially the youngsters, have become kind of anti-India. And when you are anti-India, and then you will obviously want to offset India by courting China. So once again, it is just playing one nation against another. There's no bullying in this. There's no bullying in this. And Bhutan is an even smaller nation, and the Chinese are nibbling away at Bhutanese territory. They're at least trying to do that. They're claiming Bhutanese territory as their own, and they would like to use this pressure to turn Bhutan into a pro-China, anti-India nation, and so on. So that's what's happening. Okay, all these nations, it's not like they don't respect India. It's just that they know that India is weaker than China. China, whether you like it or not, is about 4 times more powerful than India overall, hard power. So they use this against India. So what's the solution? It's not that Indians are too soft and India is too soft. It's just a fact of nature that China is more powerful than India. And smaller nations will try to play one nation against another. That's just how the game of geopolitics is played. So it's not India is too soft. It's just India hasn't risen enough thus far. India needs to grow more. India needs to become a $10 trillion economy. Let's touch $5 trillion first, then 10. It's a long game. It's a long long-term game that we are playing. There's no short-term solutions to this. The only solution is for India to regain its historical position as the world's largest economy. Historically, India was the world's largest economy for most of history. We need to regain that position. Then respect will come automatically. Next question. Herschel says, despite the Maldives government's anti-India stance, we still invited the President Mr.Muizzu to the swearing-in ceremony yesterday. What could be the reason behind this move, as we did not invite anyone from the temporary nation, Pakistan, and Afghanistan too? Okay, what's the reason behind this move? It was not an invitation. It was a summons. India summoned Mr. Muizzu and told him, come and pay respect to our democratic process. Come and pay your respects. We summoned him and he came. That's what it was. It was not an honorable invitation. It was not us extending an honor. Of course, you invite somebody to the swearing in ceremony, you're extending a great honor to them. But it was not just that, it was also a summons. You come and you pay your respects. That's what it actually was. Okay? So I know lots of Indians are upset that we invited Mr. Muizzu, who is so anti-India, to the swearing in ceremony. No, it was actually, in a sense, a show of strength also, reminding them that at the end of the day, you're in our neighborhood, you're in our backyard, and you better behave. Yeah, we know that you're courting China and so on and so forth, but just let me just remind you guys who's the real uh, big fish in the neighborhood. So it was a summons for Mr. Muizzu. He was told to come and to pay his respects, and he did that. And he will portray it as an honor. That, see, they respect me so much that they invited me. Mm, wasn't that? And if you were, I was there yesterday at the swearing-in ceremony, and when Mr. Muizzu's name was announced, a significant portion of the crowd was booing him. The audience, there was an audience of about 10,000 people. A significant portion was booing him, which was undiplomatic. But that's the audience. That's not Indian diplomats. So all right. So it's clearly evident that more Indians are now aware of international relations and geopolitics. Earlier, for most Indians, international relations and geopolitics, the word geopolitics did not exist in India, first of all, and international relations and foreign affairs meant Pakistan and Pakistan only, nothing else. But now Indians are more aware of other things like smaller nations like the Maldives and so on and so forth. And so for Mr. Muizzu, it was a summons. Okay, he was essentially told to come and pay his respects. Now, why didn't we invite the temporary nation? Because it doesn't matter. The temporary nation Pakistan is a temporary nation. Why should we invite people from a temporary nation that's a terrorist regime? Right? And their leader is not even a leader. The real force, the real power in Pakistan is the armed force, is the army, the military. So if we invite a puppet prime minister who is not really in power, what's the point of doing that? And secondly, why should we engage with these terrorists who are anyway a temporary nation? So Mr. Modi's policy is to completely ignore Pakistan, which is the right policy. So this was just a continuation of that. When it comes to Afghanistan, the Taliban is, well, the Taliban also have been installed in power. Okay, they haven't won an election. That's fine. You don't win an election, but they haven't even conquered the country. The country was given to them on a plate by the Americans, and the Americans allegedly pay the Taliban a stipend which is between $50 to $100 million a week, as claimed by various reasonably reliable sources. Now, we have good relations with the Taliban, but we officially haven't recognized their government as the legitimate government in Afghanistan. But unofficially, we have reasonably good, positive relations with the Taliban, and eventually it could go in a even more robust direction. So at this point in time, it was not appropriate to invite any Taliban representative. I did see some people who I thought were Taliban, but clearly I was wrong over there. So we haven't invited the Taliban. Okay. Shravan says China has deployed advanced fighter jets, the J-20, or their alleged fifth generation fighter plane. So they deployed these advanced fighter jets near Sikkim and other parts of the Indian border with Chinese occupied Tibet. Are they up to something big near the borders? The Chinese are ramping up their infrastructure building efforts and their military muscle north of India's border with Tibet. So in the Tibet occupied Tibet region near the Indian border, the Chinese are ramping up their activities, military activities. They are ramping up, building more roads and infrastructure. They're building tunnels and bases under the mountains because they know that they're very exposed. They're very visible. If there's a war, India can launch missile strikes and wipe out significant amounts of Chinese military assets in the region because there's no forest cover there. There's nowhere to hide it. So they're digging tunnels under the mountains and digging bases under the mountains in Tibet, in occupied Tibet, and they're bolstering their military muscle in the region, which means bringing in more military assets like these fighter planes and all that. What's the point? What's the purpose of all this? Maybe they're planning to go to war with India. It's a possibility. We have to understand that a war with China is a possibility. It may happen. It will happen if the Chinese desire a war. And India's economy is going to keep on growing. Modi 3.0, I don't expect any changes. So India is going to become more and more of a challenge to the Chinese from their perspective. We don't claim Tibet as our territory. We have actually officially recognized Tibet as a part of China. The great Mr. Vajpayee did that. Official recognition of Tibet as a part of China. But the Chinese understand what power is. And the more powerful a nation becomes, that power is like a force which acts outwards. It's like a pressure that comes in. So the Chinese are very practical and they fear India. They pretend to not fear India, but they actually do. And Mr. Modi is a very different kind of prime minister. So they actually are worried about the rise of India. So it is certainly possible. We have to keep this in mind, and we have to be aware of this, that there could be a war between India and China in the next coming. Who knows when it could happen? It is possible. Maybe a war is going to come. So maybe they are doing preparations for that. So what needs to happen from India's perspective? India needs to, I think, take almost emergency measures in the next 2-3 years to build up our military muscle. We need to have tremendous stores of ammunition. We need to have 10,000 plus missiles stockpiled. 20 BrahMos and 50, this will not work. See what's happening in Ukraine. Russia, why is Russia prevailing? Because they have seemingly inexhaustible stores of ammunition. They don't have inexhaustible stores of ammunition. Their factories are working overnight, 24/7, to churn out the ammunition needed to sustain a long war. So we have to heed the lessons of Ukraine. So India needs to take almost emergency measures now, in my opinion, to ramp up India's ammunition stockpiles and various kinds of weapons. I would say we need way more artillery. We need to significantly bolster our naval strength, because the key to making China behave in the Himalayan region, in the occupied Tibet region, actually lies in the Indian Ocean region. Counterintuitively. Okay? You can do various things in the Indian Ocean to make the Chinese behave up north. So India needs to do that. It is, I think, quite possible that the Chinese may, at some point in time in the next few years, decide to wage a war against India and humiliate India, humiliate the Indian leadership if they win, and to end the Indian growth story. So a war, I think it's possible, maybe even likely in the next few years. And maybe all this build-up they're doing, as the military build-up and all that, maybe it is in preparation for that war. So I think India needs to be really proactive and ensure that if there is a war, first of all, it should not be a long war, it should be a short war. And we should have the wherewithal, the military wherewithal, to take the battle, to take the war to their territory, to the territory they occupy in Tibet. That's what needs to happen. Next question is, okay, let's try and bring the question in. Okay, let's take another question if that one doesn't come up. Okay, this is, one second. What was the previous question? Okay, this is by Rodrajit Sarkar. Akhand Bharat has been the heartland of our dharmic culture. 2000 years ago, our ancestors gifted Hinduism and Buddhism to the people of Southeast Asia. But after all this time, the remaining dharmic Southeast Asian nations seem to have preserved our dharmic heritage much, much better than us. Despite being the majority, why didn't we preserve and nurture our dharmic heritage and culture? Listen, we fought for our heritage and culture. We have been occupied by colonizers, Abrahamic colonizers, for a significant portion of the past millennium, 1,000 years. Not the whole of Bharat, not the whole of India, but various portions at various points in time. So we had the Turkic occupation of India, which began about 1,000 or so years ago. and it lasted until the Mughal Empire existed, and it was the Marathas that destroyed the Mughal Empire, the Turco-Mughal Empire, and then the Marathas were brought down by the Europeans, by the British. So you had two major phases of foreign occupation. One was both were Abrahamic in nature, but two different religions. So India resisted throughout, and India was very much dharmic until the British left. And then we were made to believe that after 1947, we had an Indian government and we were now ruled by our own people. So we became complacent. And what happened, what turned out is that the people who were ruling us after 1947 were even more adharmic than the British. And because we had become complacent, we went along with everything, and the education system remained the same. The institutions remained the same, as in the British colonial institutions. Everything remained the same. Even today, not much has changed. The constitution is a foreign Abrahamic constitution. There's nothing dharmic about it. The education system is entirely alien. It is nothing but a continuation of the 19th century British colonial education system, and so on. So, generation after generation after generation, multiple generations of Indians have gone through the education system. And what the education system does is that it uproots, it deracinates Indians. India is the only nation where the education system doesn't teach children their own culture, their own history. So you grow up having no connection with your culture and history, and your parents are so busy trying to earn a little bit of money that they don't have the time to take care of you. And so you are not really that much in sync with your parents. You spend less time with your parents than as compared to with your teachers. And then when this happens over several generations, people, and we end up where we are today, that most people have no connection to Indian culture. They see it as something almost alien to them. Why do we need this? Why do we need a temple? Why don't we have a school there? Why don't we have a hospital? And so on. So that's where India has ended up now, a completely deracinated secular nation, where most kids and most adults hate their own or are ashamed of their own culture. They don't see any value in that. They see it as something that belonged to the past and it should be relegated to the past. We have to become more modern, which means more Western. And whatever is the in thing today is what we will pretend to follow. So that's what's happened to India. That's why I've been so frustrated with nothing being done to reform the education system. It's a long-term problem. Now, these nations, the Southeast Asian nations, you have Thailand, Suvarnabhumi, Myanmar, Cambodia, Malaysia, Indonesia, will not talk about. Even Indonesia, even though it's a Muslim country, it still respects its Hindu heritage more than India respects its own Hindu heritage. And so on. So even a nation like Vietnam, which is officially a communist nation, is more dharmic today, even today, more in touch with its dharmic heritage than India is today. So it's because of the dharmic erosion that's been engineered. Understand, engineered dharmic erosion. We have been systematically cut off from our roots. And today, if you speak about Hinduism, these 17-year-olds and 12-year-olds, they'll make fun of you. They'll say, haha, why do we need this nonsense? And then they will have a list of 15 reasons that they've been taught why to hate Hinduism. And then we have political parties with the media. They're all in sync with this anti-Hindu narrative. India is the most Hindu-phobic nation in the world. India is a nation that practices anti-Hindu apartheid. So it's all by design. It's all been engineered by the British. And they left a bunch of people in power in 1947 who were entirely in synchronicity with that agenda. I mean, what happened to the Far East, the Northeast of India after 1947? It was Christianized after 1947. This was demographic and religious re-engineering done by the government of India post 1947. Yeah. And yeah, obviously the vector agent was American missionaries and so on, but Baptists and whatever else. And today the people of that region, okay, very nice people actually, very innocent people, but they hate their own ancestral culture. That's what this does. So, those of you who have any connection with your own culture, cherish it and fight for it. And our ancestors fought for it, but we are not fighting for it. That's where we are today in free, allegedly free India. So, it's going to be a long process, a long road ahead of us. Okay, Saurabh has a couple of questions. One second, where are we? Yeah, Saurabh has a couple of questions. Saurabh Badoria. Why didn't we study in detail about the contributions of Indians in mathematics compared to what we studied about the Western contributions in our academia? Isn't our education system responsible for creating an inferiority complex? Do they want us to be mentally enslaved? And secondly, one of the previous year's UPSC questions stated that Akbar wanted to unite the nation uh, like Ashok did, but Maharana Pratap was a terrorist who became a hurdle in in Akbar's path in his noble quest to unify the nation. Yeah. So these questions, both these questions, are about the education system. The UPSC is an extension of the education system, and yeah. So yeah, the first question is about mathematics. India is the birthplace of mathematics. India has given more contributions to mathematics than anybody else. All modern mathematics exists on a foundation of Indian mathematics, but no one knows about this. It's completely been erased, first by the Europeans and then by the mentally colonized Indian, slavish Indian academics. And the objective is to ensure that Indians don't realize that what their ancestors contributed to mathematics and science, so that we continue to have this inferiority complex. And the inferiority complex is perpetuated, it is strengthened, and we are taught that everything came from outside, which means there is no value or worth in ourselves. So the objective is to mentally enslave Indians. It's to create an inferiority complex, and it succeeded brilliantly. Most Indians have an inferiority complex. Most Indians, if an Indian person says something, they'll say, "Oh, it's nonsense." If an Indian person writes a book or an article, they'll poo-poo it, they'll laugh at it. But if an Indian gets validation from the West, then that person becomes automatically a hero. So that's the inferiority complex of the Indians. They think that white skin is superior to brown skin, and they think that foreign accent is superior to an Indian accent. So this is all done by the education system, by teaching falsehoods and lies and omitting, censoring lots and lots and lots, tremendous amounts of pertinent information that you should know about your heritage. So the objective is to mentally enslave Indians, and it works brilliantly. Most Indians, you will see, have a deep rooted inferiority complex, a deep sense of shame about their culture, and they can't imagine, they can't believe that anything good comes out of India. And the objective of this is to uh, reform society. Reform society means to uproot Hinduism, destroy Hinduism, and bring in one of the two major Abrahamic religions in its place. That's the objective. Very simple. So the education system uh, doesn't it doesn't teach you how to think, it teaches you what to think. It doesn't teach you how to ask questions, how to ask the right questions, which means formulating a problem properly. It just it tells you to absorb, to swallow whatever nonsense is put in front of you, and so on. Now the other thing is about the UPSC question. Akbar wants to unite the nation and all that. Akbar was a foreigner. It doesn't matter whether he was born in India. He and terrorist. Maharana was a terrorist. Do you know what Akbar did in Chittorgarh? 30,000 men, women, and children were massacred in one day at the orders of Akbar. Isn't that terrorism? Akbar was a terrorist. Okay? But the UPSC and all, the UPSC preparation materials and all, if you go through that, it's gonna make you a self-loathing person ridden with an inferiority complex. And once you clear the UPSC exam, what do you become? You become an IAS officer. Right? That's the problem we are facing. There are still some good IAS officers. I'm sure there are many good IAS officers, but also that the majority are mentally colonized, and much of the Hindu phobia that's prevalent in India comes from there. So the objective is to destroy India as a society. That's the British. That was the objective of the British when they created the education system, and we have continued that, and we are still continuing that. And that is one of my greatest frustrations, that Mr. Modi had 10 years, Modi 1, Modi 2, in which to make some changes. Some new education policy has come out which addresses none of the root issues, none of the major root causes of the problems, the major structural issues. Addresses nothing. It's mostly cosmetic. So I don't know. Will something happen this 5 year term? I don't know. Okay, Bisnu says, doesn't democracy have its own benefits that dictatorship or monarchy doesn't have? For example, people can vote out the leader they didn't like, as opposed to in a dictatorship or monarchy where change is messier and harder and may require civilians fighting an armed government. You said India must eventually go back to its hybrid system. What would that look like in the modern context? Kings and princes, or like Russia or China? And what would be the way to build the system organically, and how long it may take for India? Okay. Democracy versus dictatorship. Imagine, okay, democracy has its benefits. Dictatorship also can have benefits. Which is better? So, imagine you have a dictator like Pol Pot. Pol Pot, the guy who ruled Cambodia, he killed off maybe 2 million of his country people, completely innocent people, children, men, women. For what reason? I don't know what. I know what, but communism. If you have a dictator like that, what do? The people can't even fight because he's starving them all. So it took another nation to intervene, Vietnam, right? So that's the danger of dictatorship. Now, what kind of dictatorship was I talking about? Monarchy. Monarchy is dictatorship, isn't it? Now, in what context does the monarchy exist is the question. Dictatorship. So when it comes to Mr. Xi Jinping, you can call him a dictator or you could call him an emperor. It's the same thing. It doesn't matter. The words are different. The fact is the same. A dictator is a monarch. It's a king or an emperor. Or a king is a dictator. It's the same thing. So it's not two different things, dictatorship / monarchy. It's the same thing. It's authoritarian rule. But in what context, what cultural context does it exist is the main question. So historically, in India, we had a hybrid system, like I've said. We had a monarch or an emperor at the top, and then you would have at the local grassroots level, you would have people electing their own their own governance thing and all, councillors, whatever. So you're a hybrid system. But at the top, you had a dharmic dictator. Understand that. And that dictator would have a council of ministers and so on who would guide him. The monarch would have that. And they had the right to ask him to step down if he was not doing a good job. And obviously, there could be a power struggle and tussle and all that. But historically, if you look at the past 2000 or so years of Indian history, have you had any king in the past 2000 years who was brutal and dictatorial towards his subjects, towards the people he served or ruled over? Give me one name. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Mihirkul was bad. So Mihirkul was an immigrant. He was a Hun, and he was despised by everyone because he was evil. But he was not a dictator in the dharmic context. He was not yet Hindu, right? He was a descendant of Huns. He was a Hun. He was a first generation invader. But his descendants, the second, third generation Huns, were entirely dharmic. I mean, Brahmagupta, the great astronomer, mathematician Brahmagupta, his patron was Vyagramukh, who was allegedly, apparently, Shweta Huna, second generation or whatever. So the point is, you cannot, I hardly can name a single king in the past 2000 years who was despotic and brutal towards his subjects. You go back a few thousand years, there's a story of Kans Mama, right? He was evil, but we know what happened to him. He was brought down by Shri Krishna. So the point is, if you are operating a dictatorship in a dharmic context, then it's very hard for you to be oppressive. The culture and the civilizational values take over. So at most, at worst, you're gonna be incompetent, but you won't be oppressive. So if there are the right kinds of checks and balance, and we've lost the information about exactly what the system was like. We obviously have the Arthashastra, in which, I mean, you can see the checks and balances that an emperor has on him, the duties of an emperor. He's more like a servant of the people than as an emperor. So that's how it was. So as long as it's a dharmic system, you won't have oppression. Now the question is, India should eventually go back to its hybrid system. What would it look like in the modern context? Imagine Emperor Ashok, who was slightly naughty. Obviously, he was kind of brutal, but overall, he was good for the country. Overall, but imagine Kanishka, or imagine Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. Okay, but imagine him in a 21st century context, with all the technology and everything at his disposal. That's what you would have. That's what it would look like. Okay, not kings and princes. Yeah, that sort of thing, but not like Russia or China. Russia, obviously, today you can say Mr. Putin is a dictator, but he is a dictator in a certain civilizational context, which is the Russian civilizational context, which is a Russian Orthodox Christian context. And obviously, it's different from the communist context which we had during the USSR days. In the Chinese system, Mr. Xi Jinping is more in a Taoist or Confucian context than a dharmic context, because China has given up dharma today, and they are more of a legalist system, which is like a Taoist thing. Yeah. And what would be the best way to build this organically? How long will it take? I can't say. The major impediment, well, lots of impediments. Okay, so major changes would need to happen for that to happen in India. Okay. Indian Persian couple says, how do you see the India Iran relationship in the future? I think Indian Persian couple is a YouTube channel. Let me check it out. Let me put that on the screen. One second. Indian Persian couple. Okay, this is a YouTube channel. It is, yeah, these are the videos. So go check them out, my viewers, if you are interested. Looks like travel videos. Most beautiful island in the world, Hormuz Island, Bandar Abbas, Iranian Girls Day Out, exploring Iranian village, mall in Tehran, intercultural couple. I'm glad they're saying intercultural couple, not interracial, because India, Iran is not really interracial. It's intercultural for sure. And so on. So it looks like an interesting channel. I may watch if I get the time. But the question, let's go back to the question. How do you see the India-Iran relationship in the future? I think the India-Iran relationship in the future will be like your relationship, India-Persian couple. Very good, harmonious relationship. Look, India and Persia have had a very ancient relationship going back at least, I don't know, a few millennia. Persia is at least 3,000 years old. The oldest dynasty that we know of is the Hakshamanish dynasty, the Achaemenid dynasty, which goes back about 1000 BC. And their ancestors were the Parshva people, who were one of the Rigvedic clans of Rigvedic India, the Parshva clan. They are one of the clans that lost the battle of the 10 plus kings. And the ones who lost were expelled out of India, went into exile, and that's how they settled Central Asia. And the Parshva clan went westwards and settled Iran. So that's a story. I've said this many times. The India-Persia relationship can be great in the future. Right now, the major impediment is the West. The West hates Iran because of 1979. What happened in 1979? The hostage crisis and the expelling of the Shah of Iran, who was a US stooge, and so on. And that's why India and Iran don't have a great relationship. Iran is right next door from India's perspective, major source of oil and gas, and that should be our primary sourcing point, isn't it, for India? Why do we need to get oil from Russia or some faraway place? Why not from our neighbors in Iran, in Persia? But the Americans won't let that happen. So it's kind of a missed opportunity. not our fault, not Iran's fault. It's the Americans who are meddling. In the future, I would like to see the India-Persia, India-Iran relationship go strong, get stronger, better. And historically, we've had the best of relations until, at least, until Iran became occupied by the Turks. So we all know about the invasion of India by Nader Shah, and most Indians think of it as the Iranians invading India. Nader Shah was not Iranian. He was not Persian. He was Turkic. Okay, so I don't blame it on the Persian people or on the people of Persia. So I think historically we've had the best of relations. I think the future looks bright, and I hope the relationship goes from strength to strength in the future. There's no need why it should not. And eventually, India and Persia will reconnect via a common border. Eventually, it will happen. So the current Pakistan-Iran border is the historical India-Persia border. So it will again in the future, once the temporary nation uh, goes takes its natural course, India and Persia will have a border, common border again. So the right now the situation is an aberration, historical aberration, but it will go back to the way it should be soon. And I would like to see the India-Persia relationship go from strength to strength. I see no reason why it should not. Okay, two questions by Rodrajit Sarkar. First, was slavery present in the Indian subcontinent before the Turkic occupation of India? And secondly, I've come across certain information that says that Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj abolished slavery from India in 1645. Which made him the first king in the world to abolish slavery? How far is this true, and what's your take on this? Okay. So, was slavery present in the subcontinent of India, in the Indian subcontinent, before the Turkic occupation of India? The answer is very simple. No. There was no slavery in India before the Turkic occupation of India or the Turkic presence in India. Show me any evidence, hard evidence. I mean, the Greeks were here. The Greeks, India had excellent relations with the Greeks during the Mauryan era. The Greeks have written about India. Megasthenes wrote about India in his book Indica. He said very clearly the Indians don't believe in slavery. There are no slaves in India. And some wonderful erudite historians have tried to claim that the word dasa means slave. Slave. Well, that's not what dasa means. Dasa means servant. Okay? Servant, like public servant or whatever servant. A servant is somebody who serves. It doesn't mean slave. But some historians, like the usual suspects, have tried to claim that dasa means slave. So that's obviously a lie. There's no, I mean, it's clearly a lie, a complete lie. So there was no slavery in India before the Turkic occupation of India. And there are people who claim that there was slavery in India, right? They're the ones who are referring to the Turkic occupation phase of India, and they are the ones who are referring to the Turkic occupiers as Indians. Like Aurangzeb was Indian, Akbar was Indian. These people had slaves. What? Balban, Ghyasuddin Balban. Yeah, he belonged to the slave dynasty, right? Balban, the Mamluk dynasty. These were Turkic slaves, not Indian slaves. So Indian kings never had slaves. Now, this information that Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj abolished slavery in India at whatever date, I don't know about this date, but maybe it's right. What does it mean? Does it mean that Indians were practicing slavery and he had to intervene and abolish slavery? No. It means that he liberated territories from the Turks. And the Turks were practicing slavery there. And Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj abolished the slavery in the regions he had liberated. That's what it means. He had abolished this ghastly, brutal, barbaric malpractice that had come from outside India. So that's what it means. So does it make him the first king in the world to abolish slavery? Maybe. But it was not Indian slavery he abolished. It was Turkic slavery that he abolished. I'm glad he did. Great man, great king. Okay, Rodrajit Sarkar again. Why isn't Delhi very well developed compared to capital cities like Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, Jakarta, Istanbul? And all of these cities are from developing countries. What are my thoughts? Okay, let's talk in a more general sense, broader sense. Let's not talk about Delhi. Let's talk about Indian cities. You take the average Indian city. You're right that if you compare Delhi with Bangkok, etc., it's not that well developed. But if you take the average Indian city, large metropolitan city, let's say million plus population, or let's say 100,000 plus population, the average Indian city, and you compare that with the average city of a similar size in Thailand, Malaysia, Turkey, etc., you will see that the Indian cities are less developed. They are worse to live in. Why is that? So let's take a hypothetical large Indian city. I will not take any name. It is a hypothetical large Indian city, could be any city. I'm sure there are many cities which are not like this. But let's take a hypothetical large Indian city. What, and you go there, what will you see? Take a satellite image. Okay, you go to a map, Google Map, and you open the satellite view. What do you see? Okay, in this hypothetical unnamed Indian city, which could be in any part of India, you will see large pockets of slums, hutments, illegal slums on public property, on public land. And these slums will exist for some time, for a few years, and then they'll become regularized. Because in this hypothetical unnamed Indian city, in any part of India, the local politicians will regularize the slum. What does that do? And where does the slum come from? So in the past, people who lived in the rural parts of India had to migrate to large cities, any city in India, large city, to get employment, because the rural parts of India were marginalized and neglected. Today it is less so. So where do these slum dwellers come from in this hypothetical unnamed Indian city? Where do they come from? Most of them are Bangladeshis and Rohingyas. Okay, so why are these Bangladeshis and Rohingyas allowed to settle in these places, in this hypothetical Indian city, by these hypothetical local politicians? Why? Because these are vote banks. You settle Bangladeshis there, you allow, and we know that when they enter India, from wherever they enter, they get Aadhaar cards and everything, which means they can get election IDs done on the basis of the Aadhaar card, which means they become citizens illegally, right? And then they are settled in the slums. They're allowed to do whatever they do, and they become vote banks for the local politicians in these hypothetical unnamed Indian cities. I'm sure there are cities that don't have this, okay? I'm not saying all cities are like this, by no means. But there will be cities like this. And when these ragtag illegal infiltrators come and settle down in a city, what happens? It places a huge burden on the civic services, on the amenities, on everything, on the economy of the city, and it brings down the quality of the population. And the neighborhoods become unsafe. Right? So that is one problem. And then in these hypothetical unnamed cities, I'm sure there are good places also, but in many of these places, the politicians are deeply corrupt. And whatever funding is allocated per year for the municipality or whatever, much of it is not used for the purpose it was allocated for. And there are lots of means of doing that, allegedly, and so on. So the root cause, my dear friends, is corruption. Today, we are fortunate that we have a government at the center that is not corrupt. We are really fortunate. Mr. Modi has ensured this. But at the lower levels, grassroots level of India, everything is corrupt. Not everywhere. I'm sure there are places where it's not there. But generally, you find it more likely than not to see corruption. So these are the problems. When are we going to see a war against corruption? That is what's holding India back. The major thing that is holding India back is corruption. So I don't know about Delhi, what the situation is like. I don't live in Delhi. I'm not very familiar with Delhi. But I am saying, without naming any specific city, overall, you will find something like this, more likely than not. I'm sure there are cities that don't have this problem. But I'm sure there are some cities that also have this problem. So that's one example of what is wrong in India. And overall, the root cause of everything that's wrong in India is corruption. So that's what needs to be tackled. But that is not a small battle. That is a gigantic war, because the entire system, some people would say, runs on corruption. So, what do you do about that? Rodrijit Sarkar again. Is it true that diplomacy in secularism was born after the Treaty of Westphalia, 1648, or is this European propaganda? Okay, so the Europeans would like you to believe that before the Europeans appeared on the world stage, there was no diplomacy, there was no secularism, there was no civilization, there was nothing. Everything good came out of Europe, right? Now, so Westphalia is 1648, right? When did Henry the Eighth live? Let's go to our friend Google and Google Henry the Eighth. Google. Okay, this is Google. Henry Eighth. So Henry the Eighth lived in between 1509 and 1547. Okay, 1509 to 1547. So this guy. So let's understand what secularism is. Secularism means the distinction. It means that the church, it means the separation of the church and the state. That's what secularism means. Today, in the Indian context, it means destroying Hinduism. In the Indian context, secularism means destroying or attempting to destroy Hinduism, the native culture of India, in India only. But globally, historically, secularism has meant the separation of church and state. Because in the first millennium AD, the Roman Empire was transformed, at least in the western part, into the Church Empire, the Vatican Empire. And the popes were the real emperors of Europe. And they meddled in everything. Kings and queens and emperors in Europe were vassals of the popes. Okay? So the Pope, the church, was the supreme authority in everything. Now, Henry VIII, who lived before the Treaty of Westphalia, he had a problem. He was married to this lady called Catherine of Aragon, very pious lady, very nice lady, who was much loved by the people of England. She was Spanish, but she was not able to produce a male child for Henry VIII. And Henry had become infatuated with this other lady, Anne Boleyn, and he wanted to divorce Catherine and he wanted to marry Anne Boleyn. And he had to beg the Pope to allow this because he couldn't even get a divorce without the approval of the Pope. And the Pope refused to give this approval. So then what Henry did is that he separated church and state by revoking his allegiance to the Vatican and creating the Anglican Church. That's what he did. So he separated church. Of course, he did not entirely separate church and state because he kept certain powers. He dissolved all the monasteries in England and took over all their possessions and all their wealth and all their lands. So he kind of usurped many of the powers that the church had. So this is before the Treaty of Westphalia. It's not entirely secularism, but he cut the church down to size and brought in a new kind of church, the Anglican Church. And before Christianity even existed, there was no church and state. So it was all secularism. And look, you can't really, if you look at the US today, they say in God we trust. It's only now in the late 2010s that they have actually marginalized the church and become an atheistic and non-Christian nation. But historically, it was always in God we trust. So the US, whether you like it or not, was a Christian nation until very recently. So where was the secularism in the US? When it comes to the UK, do you think it's a secular country? It's a Christian nation. Many European nations are officially Christian nations. So secularism is just a myth. Okay? So it was there well before the Treaty of Westphalia. What about diplomacy? Was there diplomacy before the Treaty of Westphalia? When Lord Krishna tried to avert war between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, what was he doing? He went to the Kauravas and said that the Pandavas are willing to accept just 5 villages so that there's no war. What was that? Was that not diplomacy? But you'll say, hey, the Mahabharata is a myth. Lord Krishna is a mythical figure. That's what you will say, many of you, at least some of you. My viewers are Not that stupid. But yeah, okay. Let's not talk about the Mahabharata. In the which year was this? Chandragupta Maurya's lifetime. Okay, Chandragupta, with the help of his mentor Vishnugupta, these the two of them they defeat the Nanda dynasty, and Chandragupta becomes the emperor of India. Then, so there is the beginning of the Mauryan dynasty in Bharat, in India. Then Alexander dies, and his generals all fight each other. They go to war, the war of the Diadochi, and the strongest of his generals, Seleucus Nicator, uh, comes to say hello to India. So there is a brief war between India and the Macedonians, between the Greeks, the Seleucid Mauryan War. It lasts about a year or two. It's not very serious, and then the two sides negotiate a peace. And it is said that one of the peace terms was that Chandragupta would marry a daughter of Seleucus, so that there are family relations between the two sides, and then there is no chance of war. Whether that happened or not, we don't know for sure, but there was diplomacy, there was a peace agreement. Seleucus gave back whatever he had taken, the entire Gandhara region, Afghanistan. So India got all those regions back, and Chandragupta gave Seleucus 500 war elephants with the pilots, the Mahauts. And using that massive military muscle, Seleucus was able to carve out a great empire for himself. So it wasn't that diplomacy. And the diplomatic relations were so great that even after Seleucus died and Chandragupta died, their sons had extremely friendly, warm, and cordial relations with each other, and that's known. So that's diplomacy. So listen, the Europeans will claim everything good came from there, but we don't have to believe that nonsense, right? We have evidence to the contrary. They'll say mathematics came from Europe, astronomy came from Europe, science came from Europe. They did not even know how to add large numbers, but yeah, mathematics came from Europe. Blah blah blah. Okay, Wai Mao says the Hunas or the Huns, the Sakas or the Scythians, the Tusharas or the Tocharians, who are most likely Tocharians, are mentioned in the Mahabharata as Mleccha tribes of northern and northwestern India. Correct. Does this suggest that they are of Indian origin rather than Turkic or Iranian origin? Okay. The Shakas, the Scythians were most likely of Indian origin. Your historians in JNU, etc., and Western historians will say that the Scythians were an Iranic ethnic group. Iranic, yeah. We know for a fact that the Scythians invaded India, fleeing from the Tocharians, from the Kushans, about 2,100 years before today. They invaded India successfully. They set up kingdoms in India, and then they slowly assimilated into India. And there is not one record that says there was any ethnic or cultural clash or strife between the Indians and the Scythians. We know the Scythians were polytheists who worshipped the sun. We know their language is classified as Iranic, which means it is very similar to Indian languages. So overall, the Scythians, one can say, and we know that there were lots of migrations out of India in the past few thousand years, starting from the Battle of the Ten Kings, maybe before that also. So the whole of Central Asia was settled by Indian origin kingdoms, who slowly became culturally different from India. So the Scythians and even the Tocharians, Tusharas or Kushans were descendants of ancient Indians. The Hunas, well, the Mahabharata Hunas may be different from the Huns, the Shonyu of 2,500 years before today, maybe, and the ones who invaded India, who tried invading India during the Gupta era. So the Mahabharata Huns may be different from those Huns. But so the main question is Mlecchas, right? What does Mleccha mean? So from the Indian cultural perspective, civilizational perspective, Mlecchas are those who don't practice Indian culture, which means people who don't follow the Vedic customs. That's what Mleccha means. It is not a racial term, it's a civilizational and cultural term. So there were many Indianized kingdoms in Central Asia, let's say 3,000 years ago, who were then classified as Mlecchas. Even the Yavanas, the Greeks, Ionians were classified as mlechas. What does it mean? It means that they did not, uh, they were no longer practicing Indian customs and culture or Vedic customs. Uh, so even Indian origin people who had digressed, who had turned away from the Vedic path, were classified as mlechas. So it was not about your ethnicity or your race or the color of your skin or whatever. It was about your practices, cultural practices. And if you did not practice the Vedic cultural practices or the civilizational practices of India, then you were a mlecha. It wasn't about high or low. It wasn't about racism or whatever. It was about a certain cultural specific context. So Greeks were mlechas from that perspective. Romans were mlecha from that perspective. The Chinese, who were not practicing Vedic customs, were mlechas from that perspective. Even Indians who would not practice Vedic customs would be mlecha from that perspective. Okay, so it's not a cultural or ethnic term; it's a civilizational term. Okay, Ayush Tinglu says, why has the Indus script not been deciphered yet, and what challenges do scholars face in interpreting it? Additionally, what are the implications for our understanding of the Indus Valley civilization, Sindhu Saraswati civilization, or phase of India civilization if the script were eventually deciphered? Yeah. So, one of the major problems in deciphering the script is that we have so few texts. And the script may not even be a script, it may be pictograms. So, how many pieces of script do we have? Written down pieces do we have? How many inscriptions do we have at our disposal? Maybe 50, maybe 100. And how many characters are there? Just a handful. So we don't have something like the Rosetta Stone or the Bhagasthana Behistun inscription in which there are entire paragraphs of text. We just have a few, whatever inscriptions we do have at our disposal, it's just a few characters, which makes you wonder whether it was a script or it was just pictograms or it was just heraldic signs. It is entirely possible that during the Saraswati Sindhu phase of India's civilization, people may have been writing on some form of paper or maybe on cloth. And because of India's climate and humidity and monsoon and all that has disintegrated. And what we are seeing inscribed on these things may actually be shorthand, or it may be heraldic signs or symbols and not really the script. That's one possibility. The second, so that is the main reason, the paucity of evidence. We have so few of these inscriptions that's one reason why the script has not been deciphered. And some people have claimed to have deciphered it, but we don't know how true that is. What Iravat and Mahadevan claimed to have deciphered it. I read the text in which he has claimed to decipher the script. On what basis did he claim that this means that? On what? That's absolute. It's entirely, like you say in Hindi, man ghadat, entirely out of your imagination. That's what Iravat and Mahadevan did. His decipherment is a joke. Anyway, so nobody has deciphered the text as far as we know. Somebody called Yajnadevam has used machine learning or what was it? I don't remember. I still haven't found the time to look at it. And it may be an actual decipherment. And he says it's Sanskrit. So the real problem is that we have so few inscriptions. And in each of these inscriptions, there's very little text. That's the major reason. Now, you could use machine learning, you could use artificial intelligence to decipher it, but I guess nobody has tried that. Now, what if we eventually finally decipher this text and we understand what is written there? Well, that will put an end to all the theories, right? So, what are the theories? There's the Aryan invasion theory, there's the Aryan migration theory, there's the Aryan tourism theory, picnic theory, Aryan space invasion theory, alien invasion theory. Then you have the out of India theory and whatnot. All kinds of theories. Once the Saraswati Sindhu script is deciphered and we can read what's written, it will be the end of all the theories. Right? So that may be one of the reasons why the script has not been deciphered, because they don't want to decipher it. Because the language which the script encodes may be very what would you say, inconvenient for the dominant narrative. So my strong hunch is that it is some form of Sanskrit, maybe Vedic, maybe post-Vedic, maybe late Vedic Sanskrit, some form of Sanskrit. That's what I believe. Obviously, there's no proof of that yet, as far as I know. So maybe I'll have to talk to Yajnadeva and see and actually understand what he has done. And looks like he is onto something, but we'll see. So that's what it is. So the script will put the decipherment of the script will put a final end to all that speculation. Which theory is correct? Was there an Aryan space invasion, alien invasion? Was there an Aryan picnic in India? Okay, name his is hidden says, please tell about the history of the Magsaysay Award, the so-called Nobel Prize of Asia. Some so-called journalists got this so-called Nobel Prize of Asia, which made me question its credibility. Okay, the Magsaysay Award is an American award which is given by a proxy nation, Philippines. Okay, let us see what Google and Wikipedia have to say about this. Let's put that on screen. Yes, screen is here. Magsaysay. Excuse me. The Ramon Magsaysay Award. Let's go to Wikipedia and see what Wikipedia says. Okay, Wikipedia is not a reliable source of information, but we can just for the sake of seeing it, let's see what it says. It's an annual award established to perpetuate former Philippine President Ramon Magsaysay's example of integrity in governance. So apparently, Ramon Magsaysay was an example of integrity in governance, courageous service to the people, and pragmatic realism within a democratic society. So it seeks to promote democracy, integrity in governance, courageous service to the people, and pragmatic idealism. This prize was established in 1857 by the trustees of the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, based in New York City, with the concurrence of the Philippine government. The Philippine government is and was a vassal of the US. Okay, and the fund is so the prize money comes from the US, and this has generated criticism due to the allegations of brutal suppression of dissent and subserviency to the US government during Magsaysay's life tenure as defense secretary and president, which tells you that he was an agent of the US. He was the US stooge, Magsaysay. Okay? And the money comes from the US. So it's an American award given via a proxy, which is the Philippines. And the Americans occupied the Philippines for a long time. Have you heard of the Moro massacre? Let's go to Moro massacre. Moro massacre. Okay. It was about how many people did the Americans kill in this massacre? 800, 900 men, women, children. And it was not a battle, actually. It was a massacre. And let's not put that on the screen because it is not appropriate for this live stream. But let's go back to Magsaysay Award. Okay. So the Philippines used to be a Hindu culture. The Spanish came and destroyed Hinduism. They forcibly converted lots of Filipinos to Catholic Christianity. Then the Americans defeated the Spanish, kind of, and they took over the Philippines and occupied the Philippines. And then Philippines eventually became so-called independent, which means there was a puppet government which served US interests nevertheless. And Magsaysay was a US stooge. So that's what this award is. Now, who are the people who've got this award? Let us see. Nguyen Lac Hoa, for his extraordinary valor in defense of freedom, strengthening among a beleaguered people for the resolution to resist tyranny, which means that he fought the Vietnamese communists. J.P. Narayan was actually a good man for its constructive articulation of a public conscience for modern India. So during the time when the Indian government was very strongly pro-USSR, this guy was opposing the Indian government, which made him a good guy at the time. Who else do we have? Okay, Siti Parna Kritakarna, for vigorously defending the interests of Thai farmers, critically challenging government policies with the pragmatism of a man who knows the soil. Okay, so for opposing opposing the Chakri dynasty and doing farmer protests. Good job. Sounds very familiar somehow. Huh? What else do we have? and so on. Bishop somebody, Subbulakshmi, MS Subbulakshmi, uh, and so on. Eddie, Fukuoka, lots of other people. Who do we have? A Chinese lady. What else? Dalai Lama, Tenzin Gyatso. Let's see some interesting names, shall we? Who else do we have? Ila Bhatt, Gandhian principles. Of course, Gandhian principles are very important, of course. So, Mohammed Yunus, Zafrullah Chaudhry, Aruna Roy, Big Bindi Brigade. Interesting. Who else? Prakash Amte. Journalism. Satyajit Roy. Okay. Akira Kurosawa. Arun Shauri. That's interesting. In 1982. That's very interesting. Let us see some more. Peace. Oh, Mother Teresa has to be there, obviously. What else? Let us see who else. Do I see some more? Do we see interesting names here? I wonder. Look at this guy, T.M. Krishna, the Hindu-phobic classical singer, right? Who was in the eye of a controversy recently. Did we see any other interesting figures anywhere? I don't know. Maybe I can't see very well. So the point is, it's an American award given to people who serve American interests. I mean, that's what they say. It could be, maybe it's a completely innocent award, but that's what it is. So it's it's an award funded by the US, given via the Philippines, and it's given to people who, in some way or the other, serve American interests. That's what many people allege. I don't know. I'm a very innocent people. I don't know, right? What do I know? Okay, Malik Sayed says, give some advice as to what skills should we learn for an 18-year-old from your experience. What skills? See, today, in today's world, this world is changing very rapidly. With the advent of AI, your skills are going to be, you may spend years developing a set of skills, and tomorrow you'll find that they become obsolete. And the Indian education system is so bad that it's going to make you so badly vulnerable to technological advances. Your entire skill set can be replaced by an AI. Then what do you do? Right? So, what skills do you need to learn? The first skill is to learn how to question. Learn how to question. You should be able to ask the right questions, not to others, but to yourself first of all. Because asking a question means formulating a problem. So question everything, ask questions to yourself, learn how to find information, find data, find knowledge. Don't rely on people's opinions. Learn critical thinking, but also learn how to learn. What do I mean by that? Okay, let's say you've learned how to do computer programming. You've learned Python, and you've learned SQL, and you learned Ruby on Rails, you learned Java, whatever you learned. You're a full stack developer, let's say. And then you find out that AI has taken over everything, and now you don't need all this. What do you do? So you don't need to learn how to learn. You need to be able to quickly learn new skills, which will keep you ahead of the curve. So the ability to learn new skills at any age, that's very important. So these are some of the things you need to. These are some of the skills you need to learn. So the main thing is always have an attitude of questioning things, of not believing whatever you're told. Question everything. Learn how to find information. Learn how to use a search engine. Learn how to use AI. Learn how to leverage AI, and learn how to quickly acquire new skills. That's what I would say. That's some of the things that if you have that skill set, then you will be fine long term. Okay, Vishwas Vashishta says, "What's your opinion about floating nuclear power station of Russia?" I think it's awesome. It's fantastic. It's brilliant. It's mind-boggling. Brilliant. Awesome. Wonderful. Mind-blasting. That's my opinion. I know why you asked this question. You did not want my opinion. You actually wanted to understand what this thing is about. But see how you formulated your question. My point is, learn how to formulate questions. Okay? Learn how to formulate questions, because a question is a problem statement. You actually want to understand what these things are, but you ask me for my opinion, so I'll say, oh, it's awesome. Is that what you want me to say? Learn how to ask questions, learn how to communicate. Yeah, let me go back. One second, where's the mouse? Yeah, go back to this. Learn how to communicate. Communication is critical, it's crucial to everything. Learn how to communicate verbally, learn how to communicate in writing. Now let's go back here. So what are these floating nuclear power stations? These are nuclear power stations, smallish nuclear reactors installed on ships. One of You can have, I mean, if you look at the American aircraft carriers, they all have a nuclear reactor on board. Nuclear submarines have a nuclear reactor on board. Similarly, these are ships, large ships with nuclear reactors on board. What's the point of that? The point of that is that Russia, where's the map? Where is map? I want to find map. So here is Russia. Um, on the map. So you can see Russia is a very large nation, and a significant portion of Russia is up there in the north, in the Arctic Circle, frozen most of the time. And much of it is significantly isolated and far away from the populous regions in the west of Russia. So much of Eurasian Russia is tremendously remote. So there are these towns and cities here which may not have good access to electricity. So if you have a floating nuclear power station, and if you have a new oil discovery or gas discovery or coal discovery or some other mineral resource discovery in some remote part of Russia, and you want to start leveraging and using that, but you don't have access to power, then you send this floating nuclear reactor there, nuclear power station there. It's going to produce electricity, generate electricity, and serve as a stopgap solution to this problem. So Russia is one nation that faces this problem. So I think there's a plan to build a whole bunch of these floating nuclear power stations. So that's what it's about. It's about giving electric electric power generation capabilities on demand to remote coastal parts of Russia. That's what it's about. So yeah, I think there's only one right now. I think they have to replenish the nuclear fuel every 3 years or 5 years. I think every 3 years. And there have been people who have raised concerns about this, because a ship can sink, then it would contaminate the ocean with, possibly, and you don't want that situation. So there have been some concerns raised about this, but overall, that's the concept. And there's at least one in operation right now. Academic something they call it. Okay, let's take a couple questions. Cinephile says, Bohemian Rhapsody, is it the greatest song of all time? What's your favorite song and artist? Look, I'm not that huge a fan of Bohemian Rhapsody. It's a good song. Mama, something, Mama, whatever. Queen, right? Freddie Mercury, Farrokh Bulsara. Uh, what's my favorite? I think Queen is great. They have some great songs. One of the great rock bands, obviously. Some of the greatest live shows they did. My favorite song and artist, look, there's no one song or artist that I have. I listen to music from everywhere. I have a very eclectic taste in music. I will listen to music from Mali. Where's Mali, you will ask? Mali is in Western Africa. Mali. I will listen to music from Mali. Ali Faka Touré, Toumani Diabate. You may not have heard of these people. I will listen to music from Somalia. You may not have heard of Somali music, but it's actually quite similar to Indian music in some ways. I'll listen to music from everywhere. I have a very, very, very diverse and eclectic taste in music. I listen to music from Southern America, panpipes. So And so I don't have any. I will listen to Celtic folk music. Davy Graham. Who was the other guy whose name I forget? There's Nick Drake. I will. I used to play raga music, Indian ragas on the guitar. These days I don't touch the guitar, no time. So I have a very eclectic taste in music. I don't have any favorite song, any favorite artist. I have a bunch of favorite artists. I have a bunch of favorite songs, a bunch of favorite genres. I I listen to all kinds of music. But if you were to ask me about favorite artists, Queen, yeah, sure, Queen is great. Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, and The Doors was also good, and so many more. So many more. Okay, next question. Okay, I think I'll take questions from the live chat now. I've answered lots of questions from the comments. Let us answer questions from live chat. Okay, Samantha, many young men voted Nota because they were angry about with political parties, women appeasement. They burned underwear as a protest against somebody since he promised for 50% reservation. Okay, I wasn't aware of that, but I'm not sure there's a question in there. So, okay, yeah, that's interesting. Russian trap is really good. Okay. Celtic music is great. Yes. You know what? Celtic music is almost like Indian raga music. And if you want to play it on a guitar, you need a dad gad tuning, DAD, GAD, in case you know what that is. And that music is great for certain Indian ragas as well. And if you look, and artists like Davy Graham and who's the guy who played Anji? Forget the guy's name. It was Davy Graham, but somebody else as well. So these guys were deeply interested in Indian raga music. And if you and Celtic music sounds very, very Indian in many ways. And it goes very well with the tabla. So yeah, Celtic music is great. Mayank says Mali is a Sanskrit word, and Somali, who's another Sanskrit name, which became Somalia. Okay. Look, I'm not sure that's quite how it is, but yeah. In French, in the French language, there's something called faux amis. Faux amis means false friends. It means words that sound similar in two languages, but they actually have very different meanings. So let's not try to connect everything to Sanskrit. It may not quite be the case, but I know where you're coming from. I know where you're coming from. I understand. I understand. Okay. Now, what else? Let's take some questions. Other questions. Apurva says, "Where do I start initiating myself into Indian classical music?" Well, depends. If you like vocal music, you can listen to Bhimsen Joshi. That is, or you can listen to Carnatic musicians, M.S. Subbulakshmi. Or if you like instrumental, you can listen to sitar greats like Nikhil Ghosh, like Pandit Ravishankar, Pandit Nikhil Ghosh, Nikhil Banerjee. Nayan Ghosh is somebody who still plays sitar. I meant Nikhil Banerjee. Who else was there? Obviously, Pandit Ravishankar, who passed away a few years ago. There are the Dagar brothers, Rajan Sarjan. No, I forget now. It's been so long since I listened to all this. There is Drupad music. So I would say listen to lots of classical music. Listen to the greats. Listen to Ustad Bismillah Khan Shahnai. He was a Krishna Bhakt, by the way. Vilayat Khan, Pandit Ustad Vilayat Khan. I watched his. I was present at his last concert. Nobody knew it was his last concert because he passed away a few days later. So I was there. Sarod is nice. What was his name? I forget the names. Obviously, Amjad Ali Khan is still alive. But who was the guy? Okay, that guy also. I watched his last concert. It was so weird. So anyway, my point is listen to lots of this. It's beautiful. It's brilliant. Listen to various ragas. Familiarize yourself with ragas. If you like the flute, listen to Pannalal Ghosh. Listen to Hari Prasad Chaurasia. So much you can do. Indian classical music is so incredibly rich and diverse. It is the greatest musical tradition in the history of humanity, but we don't know about it because your goddamned education system will not tell you a word about it. One of the greatest intellectual achievements of humankind, of mankind is Indian classical music, the greatest musical system ever, ever. The Western scales and melodies and harmonies are nothing compared to a raga. A raga has a character and a personality of its own. It has rigid rules, but almost infinite scope for experimentation within those boundaries. It's incredible that no one knows these things. It's so sad how Indian culture is dying. And that's one of my criticisms, one of my frustrations when it comes to the government of India. They should do more about culture. Of course, they've done so much for the upliftment of the country. Mr. Modi has done tremendous amounts of work. The best prime minister since 1947, Mr. Modi. But I am seriously frustrated about the lack of action when it comes to culture, civilization, and education, and illegal immigration. There are ministries for this. So I hope there's progress on this front. Okay. Oh, yes. Anmol says the Bangladeshi PM was right. Miss Hasina, Sheikh Hasina. Sinister plans are afoot to create a Christian state of Zo people in the Far East region of India. So the Americans want to create a Christian nation in this region. Okay. The Manipur crisis is a geopolitical crisis, and behind it is the West. They actually told Sheikh Hasina that we will not interfere in the Bangladesh elections if you give us an island that the Americans want and you allow us to create a Christian nation in a certain part of Bangladesh. Give the cookies a nation of their own. The cookies are fighting three countries right now: India, Bangladesh, and Burma. Okay? And this is a geopolitical issue. So the Manipur problem right now, it has no immediate solution. So yeah, she actually has blown the lid of this, and I really appreciate that. And it's a very courageous thing that she has done, Sheikh Hasina. Geopolitical Dubey says, when will we see the statue of Netaji being installed in European countries? How long will we have to sell Gandhi's name in Europe? I don't see we will ever see Subhash Chandra Bose's statues being installed in Europe. That won't happen. Mr. Gandhi, well, that's a brand that has been created over time, and it represents a weak, non-violent India. And that is something the whole world, especially the Western world, would like to see. That's why they would like to honor Gandhi, Mr. Gandhi, because that's the values they want India to practice today. That's the path they want India to walk today. And the government of India over the past 70 years has invested so much into building this brand that it just continues. And today the problem is, if you criticize Mr. Gandhi, you're going to get a tremendous amount of hate. And if you're a politician, you simply can't afford to criticize Mr. Gandhi even today, because the majority of Indians are brainwashed because of the education system. It all goes back to the goddamned education system and how bad it is. That's why we need to start reforming it fundamentally. But yeah, we won't see statues of Mr. Bose being installed anywhere. Won't happen. Mihir says, what do you think about a small African country like Mozambique? I think it's fantastic, it's brilliant, it's mind-blowing, it's awesome. I'm sure that's not what you want me to say, right? So you have to ask a specific question. I don't know what you're asking. What do I think about it? I think it's awesome. It's brilliant. It's beautiful. Wonderful, vibrant African culture. Awesome. Mind-blowing. I don't know what you want me to answer. What do you want me to say? What do I think about their economy? What do I think about their history? What do I think about their geopolitics? Ask a specific question. Understand, learn how to ask questions, formulate questions the right way. You asked a very generic question to which I can give a very generic answer. Look, Mozambique, if you want to see where it is, we can discover it. Let's go back to the map. Let me actually speak a little bit about Mozambique. So Mozambique is this nation in Eastern Africa. It has connections, historic, ancient connections with India. If you see the kind of clothes the people of Mozambique, Tanzania, Kenya wear, those fabrics, those patterns are reminiscent of the clothes people in Gujarat used to wear in the 19th, even 20th century. Even now, if you see the cuisine in Mozambique, in Tanzania, in Kenya, it's very, very strongly influenced by India. These countries There's a significant Islamic population in these countries. These countries are very poor, and most of these countries are resource rich. So I can give you information, I can answer the question, but only if you ask me a specific question will I be able to actually tell you something. Okay. Um, Herschel says, did the deep state focus on Indian elections too much? That now they are losing their stronghold Europe. Recently, I think right-wing parties got huge gains in the European Parliament, EU Parliament. No, the US has sufficient resources to focus on multiple countries at the same time. They have the resources to do that. So it's not like if they focus on influencing the Indian election and interfering in the Indian election, then they will not be able to focus on anything else. It's not like that. They have the resources to interfere in half the world's elections at the same time. But what's happening in Europe, that the right wing, like Madame Signora Meloni's party, Signorina Meloni's party, and so on, Madame Meloni's party, etc., and the Netherlands also, other places, the right wing, you can see what they call the far right, is enjoying a kind of resurgence in Europe. It's simply a natural reaction to the policies of the EU government, of the EU, which are deeply, deeply anti people policies. It's about bringing in illegal immigration into Europe. Only military age men from certain countries and who belong to certain religions. That's what is being done to Europe. It is artificially re engineering European demographics, cultural demographics, ethnic demographics, and religious demographics. They are trying to destroy Europe, to destroy Europe's identity. And that's why you will have some kind of a reaction, and you're seeing that right now. So this doesn't have any connection with the American attempts to interfere within India, which have happened in 2024, which will happen in the future, which have happened in the past as well. Not connected. Fakaza, father of Akaza, says, your opinions on Peter the Great. I think he was great. It was fantastic, mind blowing, brilliant, awesome, super awesome. Look, okay. So look, Peter the Great is a very interesting figure, and it would take me a certain amount of time to give you an overview of this guy and his career and his impact on the world. So maybe we can do it in the next live stream. Right now, I'll just take rapid fire questions. But okay, maybe you can reformulate this question in a slightly better way for the next live stream whenever it happens, and I can take it up. Saransh Saini says, if the Americans are the descendants of the British, why did they fight them and call it the War of Independence? Yeah, interesting question, right? So, when you have an entire continent of your own, then why would you send 2% taxes to the King of England? You would like to keep the 2% also for yourself. So it was not about fighting. Look, the Mahabharata was cousins fighting cousins. Okay? So ethnicity has nothing to do about this. It is about personal interest. So they fought them because they wanted the entire continent for themselves. George Washington and his cronies. Right? It was simply about greed and about keeping all the money for yourself. 2% was too much for them to give as a tax to the British. And today the Americans pay what? 45% tax? And they keep quiet about it. And they went to war for 2%. How's that? Akhilesh says, if you could design a new constitution for India, what core principles would guide it? It would be a dharmic constitution. As simple as that. That's the core principle. The core principle is dharma. Dharma. The constitution of India has to be a dharmic constitution, not an adharmic constitution, the way what we have today. And it has to be ratified by the people of India. The current constitution has never been ratified by the people of India. Okay. Malik Sayed says, even if we look at satellite images of cities of countries like Iraq, Syria, etc., they look planned and well organized. Why is that? And why is a random Indian city why does it look messy without even having a war? It's because of the way India was governed after 1947. If you look at, you go to the places where the British have had, if you look at the various cities that the British have governed, take, let's not talk about India for just a bit. Let's go to the map and let me show you a city that the British governed, okay, which is Rangoon, Yangon. Now let's take a look at Yangon. So, um, so there are parts of Yangon that the British governed. Okay, I guess it will take me a while. Or what about old Yangon or British school, British University College or something? So there will be parts of Yangon that were developed by the British, which will be much better organized than later Yangon. Similarly, there will be certain Indian cities which the British actually built and developed, and those parts of those Indian cities will be laid out properly, very well structured, and the same city, the areas that developed after 1947 will be all haphazard and chaotic. Why is that? It's because after 1947, the Indian governments did not care about the people. They did not plan cities. They were more interested in extracting resources out of the people through corruption and other means. And cities just developed completely randomly and organically without any planning whatsoever. And of course, in like I said, in many hypothetical cities in India, the local politicians have hypothetically allowed large slums to come up. They've actually put those slums in place so that these are slums in which foreign infiltrators live. They can serve as vote banks because those foreign infiltrators will be given Indian papers, documents. It's the root cause is corruption. The root cause is government apathy. India has way more resources than the nations you've named, Syria, Iraq, whatever. But how are the resources used? Where do those resources go? Who pockets those resources even today? In the hypothetical municipalities and district things of various Indian cities, right? Bimal says, I'm a Nepali Hindu. I want the Vedic way to flourish in the Indian subcontinent, including Nepal. But I foresee a loss of Nepalese identity within it, which we do not want. I know you're right. Those fears are well justified. After the earthquake, the recent major earthquake in Nepal, there were many s- buildings that were brought down by the earthquake that were destroyed. Many temples got damaged, and I saw on social media many missionaries saying that it is good that these temples have been destroyed by the earthquakes. Now we should have churches coming up over there. And after the earthquake, there has been a major focus on Nepal from the missionary organizations, and lots of Nepalese are being converted to foreign religions. That's happening. That's one thing that's happening. And secondly, we have the communist governments that are communist parties that hold sway in Nepal. And they are also, many of them are also very badly Hindu phobic. So it looks like Nepal will also go down the same route of secularism and Hindu phobia. Looks like that. And obviously there is a reaction to that as well, which means that there's a section of society in Nepal that wants a return to Hindu Rajtantra, Hindu monarchy. Now, who prevails right now? The politicians, the communist politicians are in power, and so they will want to retain their power, cling on to power, and they will not allow this to happen. So eventually, we'll have to see whether the people prevail or whether the people are reduced to a minority and most people get converted to foreign religions. I hope it doesn't happen. I would like to see Nepal return to its roots, which is the same roots as India, as Bharat, which is the civilizational identity that has always been the Nepalese civilizational identity, which is the same as the Bharatiya civilizational identity. Okay. Anav Jain says, what's your thought on Vivek Ramaswamy as VP? I don't think he could become VP. Maybe it'll be somebody else. But if Mr. Trump does win this election, the upcoming election, then Vivek may possibly get a good position in his cabinet. I don't think he'll be the vice president. I don't think so. Will he be a good vice president if he hypothetically becomes the VP? I don't know. I think what Vivek needs to do is to get some proper experience of a few years in a proper leadership position, governance position, and he has to prove his worth. Then people will take him more seriously, and then maybe in 29 he could be VP or maybe even run for president. I think he's a very good speaker. He's a tremendously intelligent person, but his one weakness is that he doesn't have any actual experience leading and governing. So he needs to get that experience, gain that experience. He's never been the governor of a state or even the mayor of a city, for example. You need something, right? Some demonstrable proof of your actual abilities. So he lacks that. So maybe if Trump does win, then maybe Vivek will get a good position in the cabinet. And that would be the stepping stone for him to move forward to 2029. But will Trump win is the big question. I think it's unlikely. I, of course, could be wrong, but I think it's unlikely that Trump will win. So that's the next question by Yash. Is there any chance for Trump to come to power in the US? What would be more favorable for India? Biden coming to power or Trump? Look, Biden, I don't see him coming to power. I don't see him standing for election in 24. He's way past his expiry date as a functioning human being. He belongs in a retirement home, in an elderly home. He is cognitively impaired. It's very clear. So Biden, if they tried, I mean, the Democrats could very well put Biden up for president again. Who knows? But the real question is there any chance of Trump coming back to power? I think I would be happy to see him come back to power because I think the US will be a much more interesting place with him in power. But will he actually come to power? I think it's unlikely. I think if the elections are free and fair, he may sweep the elections. But I think it's unlikely that he'll come to power. Let's just put it at that. And I think he'll be lucky if he is not 1963. So I could be wrong, but I don't think he'll come back to power. Okay, we are almost there. Almost at the end. Malik says, why don't you vlog? Look, I am not a vlogger. For vlogging, you need to spend the day recording yourself, then you edit the whole thing down to a 10-15 minute thing. That's not for me. I could perhaps do it when I travel someplace, but then again you can't experience what you're doing because you're busy filming yourself. And maybe you're not filming it yourself, maybe you have somebody else do it for you, but then you're on camera, and well, that's different as opposed to when you're not on camera. So that's not for me. But I do these live streams, which is me being 100% authentic and unfiltered. So consider these to be vlogs. This is more authentic than being a vlogger, because when you're doing these 2-hour live streams, you can't hide who you are. You simply can't hide who you really are. Your authentic self will come through. In a vlog, you can act, you can edit stuff, you can censor stuff if you make a slip or a mistake. But in a live stream, you can't do that. So I think live streams are way more authentic than vlogs. Vlogs can perhaps be more entertaining. You can have transitions, you can have wonderful highlights, you can have music, you can have acting, you can play a character and people will believe it's the real thing. But a vlog is not the real thing. I'm sure it's more entertaining. But a live stream is where you get to see the person who they really are. I mean, I've done what? This is live stream 189. You know the real me. After doing 189 live streams, if I was pretending to be somebody I'm not, you can't do it for 189 episodes. You simply can't. So you are seeing the authentic me. I mean, that's the difference between a live stream and a vlog. So yeah, so vlogs, I may do some vlogs in the future, maybe, but overall, I'm not a vlogger. I'm more of what you see. Okay, so shall we take maybe one or two questions? Okay, Dr. Shankar says, do you see previous term ministers retaining their ministries? How do you see previous term ministers retaining their ministries? I don't know. I'm not a political expert when it comes to internal politics. I think at least some of them could retain their ministries. I predict that Dr. Jaishankar will retain his ministry, external affairs. I predict that right now. Let's see how true that comes out to be. I don't think he'll be given defense or finance. I think he will be foreign minister. So he will for sure retain the ministry. Whether Mrs. Sitaraman retains finance or goes to some other ministry or now and so on, I'm not sure about that. But one prediction I can certainly make. Others, I think some of them will certainly retain their ministries. Some of them will be reshuffled. But Dr. Jaishankar will remain foreign minister. That is my prediction. Okay, I think here we are. Okay, let's take one or two more questions. Shall we? How fast are you able to read books and how? I think I read books at the speed of light or something. I read really, really fast. I can actually probably digest a paragraph in a couple of seconds or something, depending on the context, depending on the topic. If it's a completely new topic for me, it may take longer. If I'm reading fiction, I just breeze through books. If I'm reading non-fiction and it's something a subject I'm more familiar with, I could read really, really fast. So the more you read, the better you get, the faster you get. And I've read, I don't know, tens of thousands of books, perhaps. So how? Through practice. Okay. Sonia Sinha says, thank you for your authenticity. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay. Aditya says, how to improve English? You improve English or Hindi or Assamese or Thai or Swahili or any language, the way you improve your guitar skills, your football skills, your boxing skills, or whatever, by practice. Practice, practice, practice. You won't improve your English by reading books. Look, actually, you can. At least your comprehension of English will improve if you read lots of books. But if you want to be able to speak better, speak all day, all night, and try and catch where you're deficient and improve on that. Best thing is record yourself with your phone 10 minutes a day speaking something, and then force yourself to watch that, and you won't enjoy that experience. But that's what's gonna help you improve, help you see where you need to improve. That goes to public speaking, to English, Hindi, whatever. That's how you improve, by consciously improving regularly. Make a 1% improvement every week, not every day, just every week. That itself is the way to do it. Okay, my friends, I think we are done. We are at the end of this session, 2 hours, 14 plus minutes. Thank you very much once again for all your questions. This has been a hybrid session. I can see Magnus Carlson and Empress Reem and others asking me questions. Very, very, very sorry. I'm not going to be able to take your questions now, but we will continue this in the future live streams, one coming up very soon. All right. Thank you so much for all the questions, for your viewership, for your support, for everything. And I will see you very soon in the next live stream. And always, as always, don't forget to keep raising your standards. See you. Bye.